Welcome to the channel, guys. My name is Jess. So Bitcoin's most recent weekly candle close had the potential to push us all the way up to $100,000. The goal was to close above 93.7 and we were just shy of that target by $3. The price is now in a little bit of a stalemate as we continue to push up against high time frame resistance. And the real question is whether or not the buyers, as we push up against resistance, are going to continue to gather strength and ability to push past the sell wall, or whether this most recent weekly candle close was an early sign for an oncoming crash. Let's dive into all of that in today's video. Let's talk about the recent price action, analysis on both the short and high time frame charts, and everything that you need to watch out for. Before we dive in, make sure you guys smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to get regular Bitcoin analysis every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. And sign up to my free Telegram channel for more regular Bitcoin updates. If you're a trader and you're interested in my VIP channel, be sure to message me down below on Telegram. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trading setups with exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. Alrighty guys, so diving into the weekly time frame, let's start off with a little bit of context on this most recent weekly candle close and why it was so important that Bitcoin remained above $93,700. So here on the weekly time frame, we can see two key horizontal ranges. We have our most recent one starting here at $80,000 or $81,000 and ending at $86,000. Now, in the loss of this weekly range, this is when we went on to retest macro bear market triggers, right? Being the 50 EMA on the weekly time frame as well as the Gaussian channel. And in that bounce there from those macro sort of bear market triggers, as we tested those supports and bounced, we ended up in this most recent week pushing out of our prior weekly range. And in that push, Bitcoin went all the way up to retest the next weekly range that we had here on the charts, starting at $93,700. So it was important for us to get a close back above that level because it would essentially trigger that Bitcoin on a high time frame has re-entered this prior weekly range and will therefore continue to travel within that range, right? Establishing support at 93.7 and potentially moving back up to retest these highs at $104,000 and $105,000. Now, if we take a look at the actual close itself, we were just shy of that. So the close should have been at 93,699 and we closed the candle at 93,696. So we were literally $3 off that target. And we can see since then, the price action has been in that little bit of a stalemate, right? We've continued to push against resistance here on the high time frame charts. And even on the weekly time frame, we can see those reactions being, those wicks above and then consistent rejections back to sort of sit around this range over here, around $93,000 to $94,000. Now, despite all of that, obviously the weekly candle close was still very much bullish. Even though we didn't push up right into that next weekly range low, we still managed to break out of our prior weekly range here, and momentum has still retained a lot of positive sort of goals, right? We pushed above 49.9, that prior resistance on momentum, and we're still very much seeing a bullish development, right? A higher high sort of situation and retaining movement above this prior downtrend, right? So the overarching close was still good, but as we sort of approach this really crucial level of resistance here at the prior weekly range, the fact that we didn't close above it and establish as a support does sort of warn for a potential correction here. And now that all depends on what we see developing across the daily and the 4-hour time frame. So let's dive into the video today and really get into what we're seeing there and what it all means. So if we go over to the daily time frame and take a look at what's going on over here, we can see this sort of struggle that's happening as we hover around that 93.7k range on the weekly time frame. So on the daily time frame, we can see very clearly mapped out our prior 2025 downtrend, the downtrend that took us from the middle of January up until very recently when we broke out in the middle to end of April. Now, since the breakout, we've managed to clear above the prior highs here at $88,700. So on the high time frame, this retains as our current most crucial level of high time frame support, right? And also sort of that bullish chart level, right? If we fall below that, we flip the charts back to being potentially quite bearish. And what we're currently doing is retesting the next prior high in that downtrend, here between $95,000 and $99,000. You guys can see it really clearly mapped out using the Smart Money Concepts indicator. So that is the sort of liquidity zone that Bitcoin is currently retesting. And if we take a look at the last 4 or 5 daily candle closes, we have essentially just been chopping around short time frame support and that next level of resistance, right? And taking a look at RSI, we're not really seeing any key signs of weakness just yet, right? We can see, we've printed a little bit of a drop in momentum, but once again, that sort of selling pressure is being absorbed very, very clearly. We're in an uptrend here on the daily time frame with higher lows on the price action, despite this sort of very slight lower high situation sort of developing up against resistance. So clear development of some really strong buying pressure and absorption of any sort of selling behavior around the short time frame level of support at 92,000, but also we can see a very, very clear amount of selling pressure, a very clear sell wall sitting at this 95k level. So we're in a little bit of a stalemate, right? And to figure out what the more likely scenario is going to be, or I guess what the key triggers for either scenario being a push up into this liquidity zone and then a move right up to $99,000, or a loss of support and a movement to retest our most crucial high time frame support at $88,000 or $88,700. That is going to be on these smaller time frame charts. We need to be able to see what exactly is going on as we chop between these two levels on the 4-hour and 1-hour time frames. Before we do that, really quickly, just to reiterate our key targets. So bullish targets, we have 99,000, right? And then closing above that liquidity zone, we have the next level of resistance at 100,000. That it's this green line over here, where historically when Bitcoin has managed to close above that level and retest it as support, you guys can see that red candle over there, as well as over here, retesting as support, we generally see a move up to create a new all-time high if we manage a bounce on that retest, right? So $100,000 is a sort of key trigger level and change of character level that Bitcoin needs to establish on the way up. And then of course we have $105,000, the top of our weekly range, and beyond that, new all-time high possibilities. On the other side, if Bitcoin loses the current short time frame support we have at $92,000, we have 88.7k as the first key target in terms of the move downwards to retest support, and then we have the move back downwards to retest 85,000, this next liquidity zone, 79, and then our range low at $74,000. So with all that in mind, let's zoom in then into the 4-hour time frame and talk about what's going on as we chop between those two key levels on the daily charts. So here on the 4-hour time frame, we can see something really, really interesting. We have a ascending wedge developing while momentum continues to drop on the 4-hour chart. So essentially what this is showing us is that the consolidation in the price action is actually quite bullish. We're seeing repetitive retests of 95k resistance with higher highs developing, or a short time frame uptrend developing on the price action, right? So that is inherently bullish, because what we're essentially seeing is that despite this continuous buildup of selling pressure with lower lows on the RSI, the sellers are just being absolutely absorbed. The selling pressure is being absorbed. The buyers are stepping in. We're continuing to accumulate Bitcoin and push up against this sell wall. And as with all sell walls where buyers continue to gather strength, at some point it's going to be absorbed and we're going to be able to push up into and past that level of resistance. But what we can also see that's a little bit concerning as well and conflicting is, alongside that sort of increasing selling pressure that we're seeing in the absorption, is the fact that, even though it's being absorbed, momentum is still quite bearish as well on the 4-hour chart. We're still below this downtrend, right? So that shows us that while we have buying pressure over here, we're not necessarily seeing enough buying pressure over here, right? So this decrease in momentum as we chop up against resistance is also a little bit of a red flag. So again, we are in a stalemate, but this also maps out really clearly what's going to trigger either scenario. So if we see Bitcoin manage to push up against this RSI downtrend and we manage to break out of that downtrend, and in our next retest we retain our short time frame uptrend as well, it is very likely then that the momentum has flipped bullish as we retest resistance, and we are going to see a breakout. Now in that breakout, we push up into $95,000 and we're going to target $99,000 to $100,000, those next key levels of resistance and the end of that liquidity zone. And on the flip side, if we continue to see rejections from our RSI downtrend here on the 4-hour time frame, at some point we're not going to be able to absorb all that increase in selling pressure. We'll push below our current uptrend, and in losing our current short time frame support at $91,000 to $92,000, or it's more $91.5 to $92,000, Bitcoin will end up losing this level of support and retesting these lower levels, right? So first of all, on the short time frame, we have our current sort of weekly uptrend, or it's probably been longer than a week. Let me check. Okay, yeah, so 19-day uptrend. We have that sort of larger uptrend that's going to act as a dynamic level of support. And just below that, with confluence at our 200 EMA, that red sort of squiggly line, we have $88.7 thousand, that sort of key high time frame support on the daily time frame. So even though we might see a correction if Bitcoin's momentum continues to remain bearish, this correction will still be considered, in general, a bullish correction. It is just a normal show of, I guess, profit taking or whatever it might be. And we've just gone on to retest prior highs on the daily time frame. Let me show you guys. Right, so we've gone on to retest prior highs in the daily time frame, and if we bounce here, we still have a very sort of bullish trajectory, or bullish macro trajectory ahead. There's nothing to say that a retest of $88.7 thousand is going to flip the charts from being bearish. It's only if we lose that level of support. Now, before I wrap up the video today, I do really quickly want to actually touch on Total 2 and the rest of the cryptocurrency market. So far, after Bitcoin's broken out of the 2025 downtrend, Total 2 has gone on to do the same, right? We have the 2025 downtrend over here, and after retesting the macro uptrend that we have there on Total 2 at around $830 billion, we managed to get a bounce and we broke out of the 2025 downtrend as well. But what we've seen across Bitcoin that we have not yet seen on altcoin market cap and the total cryptocurrency market cap is a push above the prior high in that downtrend, right? And in my last videos, if you guys were part of, that sort of Bitcoin breakout, you would remember that I talked about how important it was that we cleared above that first level of resistance, because that is what is actually going to flip charts to being bullish, right? Because we managed to clear and push finally for the first time in this entire segment of price action higher highs. So even though we've broken out of the structural downtrend here on both Total 2 and Total 3, if you go check the charts, exactly the same, we haven't actually managed to clear and push and make higher highs. We're still very much making lower highs right now in the price action. So even though the trend line's broken, we're just still in a less steep of a downtrend. So while this most recent retest of 95K isn't all that important for Bitcoin specifically, right? Like I said, we can still have a correction a little bit to go to 88.7 thousand, and it would still be bullish for Bitcoin. Total 2 and Total 3 are in a little bit more of a critical position, right? Bitcoin has been leading this rally. Bitcoin dominance is still really, really high. And if we manage to see Bitcoin actually push above that level of resistance at 95K, that should support the rest of the cryptocurrency market as well to then push above these other levels of resistance, right? Because right now in these early stages of a rally or a breakout, when Bitcoin dominance is so high, Bitcoin does sort of lead. Market will follow whatever it sort of does. So if we manage to break above that resistance, Total 3 and Total 2 should have these sort of prior high breakouts as well. And that is when we'll likely see even more aggressive sort of accumulation behavior of altcoins and, more, I guess, aggressive bullish price action overall in the entire cryptocurrency market. Alrighty guys, that is a wrap on the analysis for today. Thank you for tuning in for another episode. If you enjoyed the video or you learned something, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to get regular Bitcoin analysis every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. And join my free Telegram for more regular Bitcoin updates. If you're interested in my VIP trading channel, don't forget to message me down below on Telegram. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trading setups with exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. Hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!